When he was 5 years old, his mother took him to a boarding school and left him there. He's been waiting for her ever since. This is his story. I'm Ardith Goodwin. I'm the author. I'm the artist behind the entire world-building project called The Land of Ardithian. The predictably unpredictable tales from the land of Ardithian. It's a 5-book series. This is the first book called Penwondertive. But it's quite a huge project in that I've created all of the original contemporary art of the world-building process. The characters, the energies, the places, the settings. And I've written the story as a self-taught debut artist. And I'm going to be reading aloud the entire story, Penwondertive, to you over the next few weeks. Because I want to introduce you to this world. Book 2, The Blue Line Echo, comes out this fall. And this is the precursor. This is the ticket of admission so that you really get a grasp and understand how fantastical and important this imaginative, deliciously odd world is, especially for Minterton and his friends and his family. So let's dive into chapter 1. It's called Little Man Crimes. And throughout the book, the paintings accompany the chapter. So this is Minterton. There's the picture of him back here. And let's dive in. 2 years ago to the day, Minterton's mom brought him to St. William's boarding school and left him there. He simply expected her to walk back in the door at some point and pick him up like a grocery bag she forgot to load in the car. But she never returned. What that taught him was the belief in the nevers. Now that he's 9, missing her isn't as hard as it used to be, but he'll never stop wondering why she never returned, and his heart may never forgive her. If I have to listen to Mr. Twinnig ramble on one more minute about what a helping verb is, I'm going to scream, Minterton thought to himself as he rolled his eyes away from his teacher and out towards the window. With a view of a glorious mother oak, he longed for the day he could climb her gigantic branches and experience the world as the birds did. Fresh, crisp smells wafted through the window slats, and even for a young boy, they were intoxicating. Why can't I just be left alone? I want to read my own books, he asked himself as his attention drifted anywhere but where it needed to be. Although he loved reading, learning bored him to tears, at least the topics Mr. Twinnig taught. The world outside that window captivated his young heart way more than writing the states and capitals 5 times each, or his grammar studies. Ignoring every other word from Mr. Twinnig, Mint looked up, noticed the sky through the branches, and pictured himself living inside a treehouse instead of paying attention to what he considered to be teacher dribble. I know the hardest tree in the world resides in Australia, and this chair I'm sitting in has to be an offspring, he thought, making him squirm with discomfort. A burst of blue flitted past the window, perching itself on the ledge outside, looking directly at him. Its head tilted back and forth, and as the bird began to tweet, Minterton smiled wide and felt the bird was trying to talk to him. I see you there, little one. Fancy a chat, do you? Mint asked, and without thinking, he began to whistle back, triggering the wrath of his teacher. With a whack, a ruler slammed on his desk, delivering a shock that made every one of his young muscles twitch. That's the final straw, Minterton. Detention once again for you, and I'm going to have my say with the headmaster because I will not be disrupted again while I'm teaching, Mr. Twinnig screamed, and Minterton's teeth clenched tighter, his head lowering in embarrassment. I guess that means more floor scrubbing with Mr. Loring, Mint thought, and he inwardly smiled. Raising a young boy was not on Raymond's to-do list that morning, but coffee was. Raymond Loring loved a hot cup of put hair on your chest black coffee. and he typically had at least 3 cups before noon. A lot of his hair had fallen out long ago, along with a few teeth, and many days he felt his eyesight would do the same. His bones hurt, especially in the damp early morning, and his skin had grown so thin you could see through it in some places. In his youth, he lived a very different life, full of adventure, hard work, and most importantly, being with the love of his life. But those days were a hint of a memory now, and coffee replaced more things than he cared to admit. His life on the island was his, and even though he decided to come to the mainland once a week to clean the school, he was quite content with the solitary life he had grown to love. If you didn't count the quiet moments where his past haunted him. Arriving early, he picked up his task list for the day and noticed a name that was familiar. Minterton Ian Pendergrassican, or Mint for short. "I wonder what the lad's gotten himself into this time," Raymond asked, opening the door to the detention hall. Mint sat there alone, his lost eyes looking distant and quiet. "What was the crime this time, little man?" asked Loring. "I was making bird noises in class. It wasn't my fault. There was a bluebird on the window dancing and distracting me, I promise," Mint insisted, but the look on his face was telling. Smiling, Raymond shook his head and said, "That would do it. There's a time and place for everything, young one, and bird whistling is better suited for the playground," Raymond explained, handing Mint the bucket and brush. The young lad was a daydreamer, always looking up and out of windows and into the trees, as if he were searching for friends and answers. "We're working near the front doors today. Lots of foot traffic to clean up," Raymond said as they both began the task of sweeping and scrubbing. As Mint attempted to scrub the tiles assigned to him, that same bluebird caught his eye. The odd little one, the blue shiny one. It kept dancing back and forth as if it were trying to convince Mint to do the same. "You're a dancer, you are," Mint whispered to the bird and softly whistled in its direction. Loring gave him a stern look, and he grew quiet. "I know. Better suited for the playground," Mint said in a way where he knew it was wise to listen. The following Wednesday, as Raymond was wrapping up his cleaning efforts, he heard a great deal of commotion inside the office. The phrases "state orphanage" and "no other choice" were thrown back and forth between the headmaster and a lady whose voice he didn't recognize. Mint's name echoed, and Ray paused. Horror stories laced all the news from the orphanage, and he knew it was no place for Mint. With a gentle knock on the door, Raymond entered. Words were shared, papers exchanged, and their lives would be altered forever. Mint, seated just outside the office, had no clue why he was called to see the headmaster. His little brain figured he had earned another round of scrubbing, but wasn't quite sure why his teacher told him to gather his things. Raymond walked out of the office, placed his hand on Mint's shoulder, and said, "Let's go, Mint. You're coming home with me." Mint looked up at him with a confused look, grabbed his small bag, and headed out the door. "What's going on, Mr. Loring? Where are we going?" the young lad asked. Raymond bent down, looked Mint in the eye, and said, "To a lighthouse. Would you like to see my lighthouse, Mint?" he asked. "Sure would. Never seen a lighthouse before except in books," he replied. Crossing the street, the car noises startled Mint, causing him to grab Mr. Loring's hand with a fright. "You aren't used to being outside of the school, are you?" Raymond asked, walking him safely to the other side toward the Sea and Ship store. As they walked through the double glass doors, the scent of sweets and tobacco greeted them, along with a bell announcing their energy. "Is all of this for sale, Mr. Loring?" Mint asked, with his eyes struggling to take it all in. Raymond smiled, looked down at Mint's feet and back up to his head. "School uniforms won't be quite useful on the island, so let's get you some proper clothes, why don't we?" Raymond asked, picking out a pair of small rubber boots, white socks, a pair of jeans, and a t-shirt in Mint's size, along with various food items that looked promising. Before walking out the door, Raymond threw in an old paperback from the Have One, Leave One rack. Mint knew one had not been left, but didn't utter a word. Through the plastic bag, he could see the book cover and noticed a fellow's name of Robinson Crusoe, who he had never heard of before. They didn't speak on the bus or on the short walk to the harbor, which Mint didn't mind because it gave him a chance to notice the variety of trees on every street corner. Mint looked surprised when they approached a green and yellow dinghy down at the dock that was only large enough for them both. I've never been on a boat before. What if we sink, Mr. Loring?" Mint asked in a way that sounded brave, but the fear cracking his voice was the tell. "Boat rides will be part of your life now, Mint. You'll get used to them. Let's get your life jacket on, and always remember to hold on to the side and to keep your eyes toward the lighthouse," Raymond said. "I'm up for anything, Mr. Loring, as long as it means I don't have to go back to that school," Mint said, and although the boat ride made his stomach queasy, the wind in his face made him feel like he was flying, and he loved it. As the boat slowed, pulling up to the dock, Mint's nose curled. "The air smells funny, Mr. Loring. It kind of stinks. Reminds me of old gym socks dipped in salt," Mint said. Raymond laughed and explained that he would get used to the smells of the sea and sand, but Mint was doubtful. The water lapped up to the dock like it was trying to lick the wood clean, and in the distance the sound of a lonesome bird echoed in his ear. "Take your shoes off and put these on before getting out of the boat, Mint," Raymond said as his old shoes looked worn and threadbare. Mint's new boots were dark green and shiny, heavier at the toe end than on the heel, and they were awful smelling. "They stink too, Mr. Loring, but I love the color," Mint said, placing each boot on proudly, and he noticed that they felt longer than he expected. "If you're going to be a seaman, you must wear your boots, young one," Raymond said with a smile, helping Mint on the dock, which was wet and slick from sea spray. Oddly shaped birds with what looked like garbage bag necks were perched on the end of the wooden posts. The head of a fox, a face with wild hair, and a bird with rather fat teeth below its beak were carved at the bottom of each piling, as if they were the welcoming committee. Mint found them delightfully strange. Looking upwards, he saw a lighthouse, and with each step it grew taller, making him wonder how far it was to the very top. "That's the tallest thing I've ever seen besides Mother Oak, Mr. Loring. Are we really going to live in it?" Mint asked. Taking a second to get his bearings, he realized words were flowing in his direction. "Yup, this'll be your new home, Mint. And please, call me Old Ray, will you? I prefer that," Raymond said. As he watched Raymond's lips move for the next few minutes, all he could remember were two words he hadn't heard since before his mother left him. "We're home." They entered the lighthouse into a round room through a heavy, arched, weathered door that creaked when it opened, sounding like a pistified cat. Over to the left stood a small wooden stove next to a chippy table with 4 sky-blue chairs. A kitchen of sorts was in front of them with several boxes and cupboards beside an old sink and fridge. Simple. Wedged in the middle of a wide concrete wall was a small window with a yellow glass orb about the size of a small plum resting on the ledge. It was the books, though, that caught Mint's attention. Shelves of books curved round along the walls, and stacks jutting out like crooked sideways stairs looked quite delightful. "Are you a librarian?" Mint asked, which made Raymond chuckle. "No, but I do have a love of books and writing, because they've taught me so much about the seas and their creatures," he replied. "Are you adopting me? Do I have to go back to school?" Mint asked, and the hope was evident in his words. "Not exactly, but you're going to live here with me. Our life will be a little different than you're used to, but hopefully you'll find island life suits you better than St. William's did. I'm sure this is all confusing, and I'll sort it out for you, but for tonight, let's just get some rest," Raymond said. Mint walked over to the window, placed the tip of his finger on the glass orb out of curiosity, and that familiar bluebird flew past, resting on one of the posts outside. Mint could have sworn it reflected a metallic light, but on closer inspection it was ordinary. Lovely, but ordinary. Old Ray unpacked the bags, took out 2 worn plates from the cupboard that looked as if they had seen better days, and he motioned for Mint to sit. Pulling out the chair, Mint sat down, noticing a few interesting marks on the tabletop. There were mismatched wavy lines in the shape of a crescent moon, the number 17 carved into the corner, and what looked like the face of a monkey smiling upwards if you turned your neck just right. Layers of dirt were caked along the edges, but the top was clean and the table was set. Turkey cold cuts and bread, grape soda pop, and a few stalks of celery with fresh tomatoes were plated in front of Mint. Celery disgusted him, but he was too scared to complain, so he swallowed the chunks whole without chewing and cleaned his plate. Old Ray added a can of sardines to his meal, and the look on Mint's face said it all, along with the smell. "Don't know what you're missing, Mint," he said with a chuckle. "Don't mean to be rude, Old Ray, but eating fish out of a can like that, it's just gross," Mint chuckled. "After you tend to the table, head on up and take the first room at the top of the stairs. It'll be your room, but wash up first. There's some books and things I think you might enjoy on the shelf. I'll show you around in the morning," Old Ray said. Mint finally headed up, but when he stepped on the third stair, it creaked as if it could snap in half, giving him a scare. "Slow down, young one," Old Ray said, handing him the book that he had grabbed earlier. The cover showed an oddly dressed man with a parrot and tropical trees, so he was excited, to say the least. "Thanks. Not sure if I'll know the words in this one, but I'll try," Mint said. "That's all I ask of you, Mint, to be open to things you've never tried before," Old Ray said. With a cautious shove, Mint pushed the bedroom door open and a warm, glowing light flooded the room. Two similar beds sat opposite one another with plaid blankets, a pillow on each, and between both sat a little shelf with a lamp that looked like an old warship. Each of the bedposts had the same carved animals as the dock would, which made Mint wonder what their story was. A rickety old table with some little boxes of this and that sat next to piles of books across the floor, stacked and still. Steamer trunks with spheres and ribbons painted on them were placed at the end of each bed, and Mint imagined they held treasures. Turning circles to take it all in, he dropped his bag and sat down right in the middle of the floor. As he did, the cracks in the walls seemed to flash an electric blue light, and Mint could have sworn he heard the word "Welcome" whispered through the walls. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and knew that as different as this place was, it already felt like home. Chapter 1, Little Man Crimes, from the Predictably Unpredictable Tales from the Land of Ardithian, Penwondertive, Book 1.